The next show will start in 1 minute.
Streaming live from the Paul and Catherine Ranke Memorial Studio, this is TV Free Baltimore. Support for TV Free Baltimore comes from viewers like you. Become a TV Free Baltimore member by visiting patreon.com/TVFreeBaltimore.
As a public service, TV Free Baltimore provides a digital soapbox for those the mainstream media ignores. The opinions expressed in this live stream are not necessarily those of the owners, management, or underwriters of TV Free Baltimore. Furthermore, TV Free Baltimore streams hyper-local content focusing on politics and entertainment in the Baltimore viewing area. Good afternoon, TV Free Baltimore viewers. We're here for another episode of Live from Annapolis featuring Delegate Lauren Aricon, and we're going to begin by talking about the $15 minimum wage that the governor vetoed, and then the veto was overridden by the General Assembly. And coming up in this stream, 2 days ago we interviewed Dr. Walter Williams, who wrote this book and a couple other ones. This one's called Race and Economics, where he deals with the negative effects of a minimum wage law. So stay tuned for that interview because it's very enlightening on what Dr. Walter Williams has to say, and it was incredible that he was willing to do an interview with us. We really appreciated that. So let's bring Delegate Aricon in. Hello, hey, Lauren.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm doing well, still alive.
So, $15 minimum wage bill passes the legislature, the governor vetoes it, and then the legislature overrides the veto. What are your thoughts on that?
That's right, just another disappointing nail in the coffin of businesses all over Maryland. It was expected, but still disappointing.
When we interviewed Dr. Williams, the surprising thing about that interview are some things that he didn't mention. He talked about a worker's productivity and the value that is created, and that if somebody's just creating $7 worth of value, raising the minimum wage to 15 is essentially going to make it unproductive for companies to hire somebody at $15 an hour that can only produce $7 an hour worth of value. But I was thinking, and again, are these conversations taking place in Annapolis? What I think is going to happen is that the businesses are just going to pass those costs on to the consumer. So let's say a McDonald's that now has to pay everybody $15 an hour. Well, guess what? Your hamburgers are going to cost more now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And go ahead.
It's basic cost benefit analysis for a company. When you're now facing a higher payroll cost, what is the most logical response? And mine would be to charge my customers more, because most small businesses are barely making the bottom line. So, it's just ignorant that people believe if you own a business, you must be a millionaire. That simply is totally inaccurate.
Right, but with places like McDonald's, not only they're going to raise the prices of their product, but they're also going to put in things like these self-service kiosks, so that there are going to be fewer people working at McDonald's.
Absolutely. I mean, I would probably say that we were going that direction anyways. They'll just make it happen faster. So,
But
we were headed in that direction.
When you're on the floor getting ready to vote for this, did anybody stand up and have these conversations, bring these points out?
Yeah, I mean, the veto override was quite heated because one of our colleagues from Montgomery County stood up and called us intellectually lazy for not supporting raising the minimum wage. And he didn't just say it once, he said it more than one time. And so after that, almost every Republican decided to stand up and just draw this thing out just to make it hurt a little bit more. I mean, you can't talk like that on the floor to your colleagues. It doesn't matter how you feel. The floor is not the place for a campaign speech. So, there was a lot of things said. I stood up and said, hey, I was going to start a business in Baltimore City a few years ago. And when they were debating the $15 minimum wage bill in Baltimore City, I literally decided not to open a business down there, which was probably 7 to 10 jobs that could have come to Baltimore City that didn't. And if you think that this is going to be any different, you're deluding yourself, and you'll be back here in 5 years asking for a $20 minimum wage. I mean, hell, the 10-10 minimum wage just went into effect. How come that didn't buy everybody an apartment like they swore it would the last time? Oh, no one can buy an apartment on 10-10, they say. Well, 5 years ago, you said that this would change everything and that it would be a living wage. Here we are again. I mean, could it be that when you do that, what really happens is that the cost of goods goes up incrementally, and therefore people are going to be better off paying for it, but businesses are more likely to close. Employment will rise. It's just pure ignorance.
Yeah, and there's a difference between a minimum wage and a living wage, and for me to hear politicians to imply that the minimum wage should be a living wage, it's insanity.
Of course it is. It's crazy. And they use these sob stories like, oh, these people immigrated here and it was so hard for them because they could only make the minimum wage, and they were very smart, intelligent, skilled people from other countries, and they came here. And I'm like, you got to start somewhere. I mean, I don't have any pity for people who have to start at the bottom. Everybody starts at the bottom at some point. So if you come, midway through your life to America, you still have to start at the bottom. I mean, that's just the way it is. If welcome to the real world. I don't appreciate when they try to use these manipulative emotional stories to try and paper mache over bad economic policy. And that is literally what we do every day in the state of Maryland.
Well, that's, the 101 tactics on the left side of the aisle where, for example, guns. You have the right to keep and bear arms, but you don't have the right to commit murder. So what they do is they use the example where someone committed murder with a gun and then says, well, we should take guns away. No, you shouldn't. And then also with economic policy, they find the one guy that's not making it, that's going hungry, and is in a sad situation, and say, boy, wouldn't it be great if the government just did X? And X is usually taking money from productive people, redistributing it from people that aren't productive, or taking their guns, or taking something away from people that are law-abiding, productive, and the fabric of society.
I agree. My favorite meme I saw recently was a joke where a woman was saying, if you outlaw abortions, it won't work because everyone will just get them illegally. But if you outlaw guns, that will work. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just like a joke. It's like we're living in the 20s. So.
Yeah. So the minimum wage is going to take effect.
Yeah.
In stages, and What year will it be fully in effect? $15 an hour.
I think for most industries, it'll be 6 years, and then I think there may be a couple of industries where it's 7 years. And there's excluded industries like seasonal workers, agriculture; those are excluded. I don't know how that's going to work exactly, but and then there's still a like a starter wage. It's 85%, but it's I think it only goes to 20, or it used to go to 21, I think, and now it's to 20. So I mean, of course, it went back and forth a little bit through conference committee. So God only knows what's really buried in that 30 pages, but that's what they swore to us was going to be the outcome. So we shall see. I mean, I know what's going to happen. 5 years from now, we're going to be having this same exact conversation about the $20 minimum wage. Because this doesn't work, which is so offensive because there probably are ways to build our economy and to grow jobs in this state. And this is literally doing the exact opposite, wasting tons of time and resources, making people want to leave the state, and it's not going to help. So more virtue signaling from Annapolis.
Yeah. Any discussion down there about the anti-business climate in Maryland and anything like that?
No, I mean, I think because we've had a Republican in power for a little while, people are maybe too comfortable, and so they're not foreseeing that in a few years we could very likely have another O'Malley running things, and it could really turn south quick. But it's Maryland just struggles with decision making. Every single business related decision, I swear, the state tries to make, it just hurts businesses more.
And it drives the productive people out of the state.
Absolutely.
So,
I mean, I've talked to multiple Democrats down there, none of whom are retiring in the state of Maryland.
I mean, isn't that a wake-up call for the other party?
No, because you can't really vote your conscience anyways as a Democrat in Maryland. You have to vote with your party or they destroy you. So it's all just nothing but it's almost like WWE. You know what the outcome is going to be before you even go into the ring.
Wow. Wait a minute. Are you telling me that wrestling's fake? No, don't tell me that. So, okay, let's move on to the gun legislation. What's going on with that?
So we did push HB 96 and the Senate bill that was the same. It's the transfer bill. It redefines the term transfer as a short-term transfer because the Court of Appeals decided that the word transfer in Maryland's law could not mean short-term. It could only mean a permanent transfer. So they had to add the words loan and borrower into current law to change what that meant. So those two bills, of the two, all the advocates had taken a neutral position on the Senate bill, but when it came to our committee, our chairman decided to replace the Senate bill and conform it with our House version. And so I'm waiting to see, how that comes down. If it goes to conference committee this week, my guess is that it will hit the floor and move to conference committee. I don't really care what it looks like at the end of the day. I don't think the government should be involved in the regulation of firearms in any way, shape, or form.
Now, once it passes, do you think Maryland issue will take it to court?
I feel like they're kind of waiting until the good and substantial falls in general, because, once that piece of regulated firearm legislation falls and people are able to carry their weapons, and I think they'll probably get through that hurdle first before they start attacking all the other, smaller projects that need to be addressed. But I imagine that almost all this gun legislation will end up being litigated at some point because it's just patently unconstitutional.
And does the constitutionality of these bills get talked about down there?
They don't care about the Constitution in Annapolis. I don't know how else to say it. They don't care.
Don't they at least get an opinion from the Attorney General's office?
Not usually. I mean, sometimes they do if they think it will help them convince us why it's a good bill, but no, not usually. And I wouldn't personally trust anything that's coming out of the office of Attorney General Frosch, anyways.
Wow. Well, bad news again. It looks like all this gun stuff's going to pass.
I wish I had good news for you one day, Charles. I wish I could say, hey, Maryland's doing so awesome.
Well, I do have some good news, and we'll talk about it near the end here. But let's move on to the state budget.
Yeah.
And let's see here, and let me bring this up for our viewers here. Okay, it says, America has a spending problem, but so does Maryland. In response, State Comptroller Peter Franchot warned Maryland's legislature to exercise caution with respect to spending. Yet legislators choose to completely ignore this warning. Analysis by the Maryland Department of Budget and Management shows that if the increase in education spending is combined with the increase in the state minimum wage and economic downturn, Maryland will experience a cumulative 5-year budget deficit of $21 million. Jesus.
They don't care, man. I mean,
Are you? I mean, this doesn't come up in conversations on the floor when you guys are getting ready to vote, really?
no. I mean, I don't. You have to have a balanced budget in Maryland. What all that means is that they'll take all of the funding from counties whose delegates and senators don't have a real voice, and they'll just strip it out, and then they'll fund whatever the hell they want with the money that was supposed to go to our project. If that's what they need to do, that's what they're going to do.
Well, balanced budget is forecast on the ability of the government to collect taxes, and if you have an economic downturn, you're going to have fewer taxes coming into the coffers.
Yeah.
So
they're more of a cross that bridge when we get there. I mean, Moody's rating company gave us a forewarning that we would be seeing a big economic downturn, and not a big one, but a small one in the next couple years. And they're like, la la la, let's cross that bridge when we get to it.
Wow. Well, their answer is just going to be, well, we'll raise taxes. And again,
that's my fear.
You get into that downward spiral. Higher taxes, the productive people leave. They take their tax dollars with them.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
I'm sure they'll probably do, we'll see. Maybe next year they'll submit something to raise our taxes. It wouldn't shock me. Nothing would.
Wow. Let's see what else is up here. Okay, now explain something to me because I'm not too clear on it. First, let me talk about and make sure that I have my facts straight. It's my understanding that the governor wanted the schools to open on a certain date, and that the General Assembly passed legislation changing the date, but in my mind, it was more of they're taking that power away from him and giving it to themselves. And then there was also something, was it with the Attorney General about he couldn't enforce liquor laws or something, and they were voting to take his power away in some way, shape, or form. So the way I'm looking at it is, okay, the Democrats won in the last election. They won overwhelmingly, local elections, down in Annapolis. So what they're doing is usurping power from both the governor and the Attorney General. Is that a good way of looking at it?
Well, it's the comptroller.
Okay,
yeah,
comptroller.
They're mad at Peter Franchot for I don't want to say this wrong, for going out of his lane. He needs to stay in his lane, but then air quotes.
Right.
And he didn't do that, and so now they want to take away, the only fun thing that he really likes, which is alcohol regulation, and give it to this advisory board. And they succeeded because the governor did veto that bill as well, and they overrode the veto on that. And then the other piece, the post Labor Day school start, Governor Hogan had just done so through executive order saying all schools need to figure out how to have school start after Labor Day. And the counties hated it, and the parents loved it, but the counties hated it. And so, yeah, they crafted legislation to give the power back to the individual school boards in each county to decide when the start date should be for the schools.
So, do you think this was a power grab by the General Assembly, or more of just shifting things around?
Yeah, for sure, it was a power grab. I mean, I'm not totally committed to a post Labor Day school start time. As you know, I homeschool my kids, and I do so year round. I don't take a specific break over summer because I think kids do forget a lot of things when you do that. I actually think the kids should be in school daily way less time than they actually are, and that there should be more frequent breaks instead of it all chunked together in the summer. But that's kind of a pipe dream of mine, to make education a little bit more functional. So this wasn't really my hill to die on, but I supported the governor in his veto, and I opposed the override. But alas, it was broken down on party lines, as we figured that it would be. So.
Okay. Anything else going on down there that's alarming?
Oh my gosh. No, those are the most offensive things so far. We did have a vote for requiring ID for same day voter registration. That's passing. And we, there's no way in Maryland to know who the heck is registering to vote, essentially, unless the person registered at the MVA when they were getting their driver's license. There's no way to confirm that they're a citizen and that they're legally eligible to vote. All we do is ask them. There's just no proof required. So, and I hear constantly, oh, well, it's because requiring ID disenfranchises people who are, of lower socioeconomic status. And to that I say, do they not require photo ID, government issued, to travel outside the country, to go and get a food stamps, to get your social security check? I mean, you need these things, and you need them all the time. So this constant insinuation that voter ID is somehow like disenfranchising people is really very sad. Plus, you can always grandfather in, the LGBT folks who may truly not have ID for one reason or another. But in Maryland, we offer free government IDs to people over the age of 65, and it's $25 for everybody else. And I think it's $15 for people under 25. So this is not unattainable, and I think that we would all feel better about our elections if somebody wasn't able to walk in on election day, register to vote, prove only that they have a bill going to the address they say they live at. I mean, this is so ripe for voter fraud. I mean, it's just a disgrace. So what is to stop somebody from driving around to 4 counties and registering in 4 different counties? The answer is nothing. Nothing is stopping them.
Yep, talking about that, do you know anything about getting your license renewed down in MVA? Because somebody's telling me there's all kinds of, you have to bring your birth certificate again, and you have to bring a passport and maybe tax returns or something.
Yeah, they have this new Real ID thing. It's something that has to do with the FAA or flying. They've required states to institute some kind of specialized identification that is more intensive. I haven't done it yet. Mine's still valid for a little longer, and I certainly wouldn't go and pay extra to get it done early.
Okay, so everybody, when they get their license renewed, has to go through this?
Yeah.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is because my mother, who's 79, just happened to lose her driver's license. I called up and said, what do we have to do to get her a copy of it? And they're like, oh, well, need to go online and see if her license passes these new requirements. If not, she has to do this, that, and all. And I'm just like, what?
Yeah, I know. It's a pain. It's a pain. To me, I think we had just adopted some sort of federal regulations. I'm not even sure if that passed the legislature or if it was just a protocol change at the NVA. But it was, to get us in line with what I think it was the FAA was requiring for air travel.
Mm. Too burdensome for my taste. And
Well, soon there's a chip in our arm. Don't worry.
what's that? Yeah.
soon, soon they're going to scan our wrists with a little computer chip inside of it.
Yeah.
Mandatory.
Yeah. Frightening, 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 frightening. So,
Yeah, scary stuff.
anything else going on down there? Then we'll get to our good news.
No, I would love some good news at this point because I just feel really beaten down.
Yeah. Well, I think it was 2 streams ago or 3 streams ago, we talked about the story that Red Maryland had covered about legislation that Pat Young introduced where he wanted people like WBAL to have an announcement saying that what you're going to hear may or may not be true. And it turns out that this legislation comes from a situation that was on WBAL. And what Red Maryland did here is they provided a clip so you can see the testimony that Pat Young gives. And I watched it, and what I found frightening, well, first of all, his bill went down in flames. It was defeated unanimously in committee, dead. But when you go and watch the testimony, at the end of the testimony, his colleagues on this committee are saying, well, we understand what you're trying to do here. It's going to need more work, but we'll revisit this next year. And, I mean, you're dealing with 2 things in my mind here. You're dealing with the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And I see this constantly on the political left, the reason that he wants to have this disclaimer before stories on WBAL, it's as if he wants to treat us as if we're children, as if we are not smart enough to hear something and to decide for ourselves what is real and fake. And also the fact that this whole situation arose from something that he heard on WBAL, which I think many would say is a conservative news outlet, okay? It's like they don't want to believe radio stations like WBAL. They want to discredit them with this disclaimer, and they want to treat us as if we are children and are too dumb to listen to something and kind of pick out, what's right and what's wrong. And for me, that's a complete undermining of our democracy, because if we're smart enough to go into the voting booth and vote for people we're going to send out to Annapolis, why should we in other situations be treated as if we were children?
That's all politics today, I feel like. They want to control the stream of messaging. I mean, Facebook has gotten crazy.
Yes, it
has. Fact-checking suggestions underneath every article. It's from a conservative news source. And their fact-checking goes straight to, what's that some horrible liberal website that just makes stuff up. It's terrible. It's like, it's all propaganda, and everything is propaganda. I basically believe nothing that I hear in mainstream media sources anymore. Everybody's looking at, what they can get out of this story. How many clicks can I get?
Yeah.
How much, how can I monetize this? Or how can I manipulate the public to, do what I wish they'll do? And so, I mean, to me, it's kind of like the label on the cigarette box. You are convincing no one not to smoke by a label on a cigarette box that says these are bad for you. We already know they're bad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you can keep trying, but I'm much more concerned just in terms of our country becoming fascist with the internet and having, whole websites demonetized and deleted. And PayPal refusing to work with them and banks refusing to work with them. I mean,
Patreon.
there was like a city that recently that what did they do? They decided they would penalize any banks that work with the NRA or that allow people
Yep.
to. I mean, it's just that is absolutely fascism, and I don't know how anybody doesn't see it. That's the scary stuff for me, and I see that it's coming. I don't know how to. I don't know how to fix the problem. Honestly, I'm waiting for some.
Well, that's what we're trying to do here on TV Free Baltimore, become a source of information for people that are out there that are troubled by what they're seeing in the mainstream media. And
Yeah.
if you look at our streams, it's usually like a minute-long video of, okay, we're streaming now. Then I always follow that with something about media consolidation or social media censorship or something that's troubling in the mainstream media. So, I mean, we're trying, but I can tell you right now, it looks to me like we're being shadow banned on Facebook sometimes.
Absolutely.
YouTube plays around with our numbers. At one point, we were over 1,200 subscribers, and then suddenly one day I clicked in and we're back down to 850. I'm just like, what happened? And we've had streams that had views of getting up around over 600, and then you go there the next day and it's down to like 140. What are you guys doing? So, I mean, we're trying, and I think TV Free Baltimore is a very unique situation, and I don't know of anybody else that's doing this sort of thing in Baltimore, particularly presenting the arguments from the political right side of the aisle. There's a couple of them that do the left, but
Oh yeah, nobody's doing that.
and as far as libertarians go, I mean, forget about it. This is the only place they have to come. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you guys doing this all the time and putting a lot of your actual blood, sweat, tears, and hours into this project.
yeah, it is a lot of work, more than I thought it would be.
I'm so sure. I wish I had more interesting stuff happening, but Siny Die's right around the corner. So
Yeah, how much longer do you have down there? Is it 2 weeks?
this week, and then I think Monday night we close.
So a week from tomorrow is it.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I was thinking maybe we could have a round table roundup in the studio.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, maybe that the week that it's all said and done, and talk about it. I've got a couple ideas for some, a couple other guests. So.
Great. Yeah, that'd be so fun.
So I think that's all that I have, unless you want to dig into this bill some more. Because hold on, let me pull it up in case people are curious. But he introduced a bill after there was a shooting at the Columbia Mall shooting, and WBAL was trying to get information from I believe it was the state police about the relationship between the shooter and the person that got shot, and they couldn't get it, so they're kind of trying to guess, and it became erroneous reporting that they later apologized for. Yeah, so, oh Lord, and that's horrible. And then, did you hear what happened at East Point Mall? I think it was Friday night or Thursday night.
Kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm telling you, the rise of unparenting. I'm going to write a book about this. Like, people need to parent their children.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's funny because when we had Walter Williams in here on Friday, he was saying, the politicians, all they want to do is throw more money at it. And that is not going to fix the problem, because one of the biggest problems in the education system today is that Johnny needs somebody that's going to put him into bed at 7, 8 o'clock at night and make sure that he gets up on time to go to school. And that when he gets home from school, that he does his homework. And he goes, a lot of problems with the education system today is that Johnny and Mary don't have somebody in their house that's making them do all that.
Exactly.
And that is something that the government can't fix. That's something that money can't fix. And his interview was very interesting. He was talking about throwing out all kinds of facts and talking about what was going on in the black community right after slavery, right after World War II, and the guy's brilliant, and we were lucky to get him, and the conversation led right into this minimum wage that the General Assembly is going to force down our throats. So if you're a viewer out there, stay tuned because that interview is coming up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to watch it.
Yeah, we're reaching out to another tier of guests, and they're willing to, be interviewed by us. So very interesting.
Awesome.
So is there anything else that you want to wrap up with, or are we done for this week?
Nothing big, but I will check back in next week, and hopefully after that the pain will stop.
So for this year.
I know, right?
All right. So
thank goodness it's only 9 days.
Yeah. So we got 2 more shows left for this season, viewers, and we'll end it with a nice roundtable roundup. We'll get some interesting people in here. So thank you once again, Lauren, and it was great having you. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Charles. See you later.
And that concludes another episode of Live in Annapolis. And like I said, stay tuned because this interview with Dr. Walter Williams is very interesting. Kevin Caldwell hosts that show, and we've got a very interesting interview with Big Jim Jones. For those that have been watching since the beginning, we had him in about a year ago, and he's actually the first person to have ever been interviewed by TV Free Baltimore when TV Free Baltimore studio was in my garage. It's no longer in there. We have studio space now, but he was the first person ever to be interviewed. Very interesting guy. He took a trip down to West Virginia into a modern-day ghost town. The town was abandoned in the early 80s. Everything is still there. There's been nobody's gone down there and put spray paint on it yet. Very interesting, great pictures and all. So we've got some great stuff coming up in this stream. So stay tuned, and that's all coming up. Thanks.
Welcome to TV Free Baltimore's Books and Authors.
Hi, I'm Kevin Caldwell, and thank you for joining me today. Now, you are probably used to seeing me on TV Free Baltimore's political show called In, Around, and Through Maryland Politics. I'm here today to host a very special edition of Books and Authors. The reason for that is, just recently, the Maryland State Legislature has overturned Governor Hogan's veto of the raising of the minimum wage. Now, to demonstrate the utter economic and political folly of our state legislature, we have reached out to a well-known economist by the name of Professor Walter E. Williams. He is the Professor Emeritus at George Mason University in Virginia, and also the author of many books. The one we will be discussing today is called Race and Economics by Walter Williams. So stay tuned and stay with me. Professor Walter Williams will be joining us shortly. We'll be right back.
In all of freedom's history, there has never been an organization quite like the National Rifle Association of America. No other people are so alert, so vigilant, so unafraid to take a stand and go out and fight for what's good and right. We, the people of the National Rifle Association, represent the very best of America's strength and of America's character.
Joining me today by via telephone, very kind enough to join us, may I add, is Professor Walter Williams. And there's a whole list of accomplishments this gentleman has. I won't waste the precious 15 minutes that we have doing that. So I'll just kind of get right to it. We're here to discuss your book, Race and Economics, How Much Can Be Blamed on Discrimination.
Yeah.
What year was, I forget, what year was this book originally put out, sir?
I think it was 2014, 2015.
Okay. And you want to give us a little bit of what brought you to want to put this book out there?
Well, I think I do economics, and I apply economic theory to a lot of human behavior and behavior that we see around. And I think that the titles, Race and Economics, How Much Does Discrimination Explains. I think that in terms of Black Americans, too much weight is put on discrimination as explaining the basic problems that Black Americans face, which is not to deny that there's discrimination, but the relevant question that we have to ask ourselves is not how much did discrimination in the past explain, but how much what does discrimination of today, how much of what we see is explained by current discrimination. And I think very, very little of it, the major problems that are caused by blacks that blacks face are caused by discrimination. And let me just kind of run through several of them. And that is, if you look at the illegitimacy rate among blacks, that is, it's devastating. It's roughly 75% of black kids nationally are born out of wedlock. They're born to unwed mothers. And that is entirely new among blacks. In 1938, the illegitimacy rate was 11%. Or if you look at the family makeup, I think that only 35% of black kids are in two-parent families. And as recently as 1940, 1950, it was 85%. And matter of fact, more black children lived in two-parent families during slavery than live today. That is, during slavery, marriage was prohibited among blacks, but however, the kids were raised with a biological mother and a biological father. And this is evidence of this is in a book by Herbert Gutman, and it's called The Black Family of Slavery to 1925, something like that. And look at your own city, Baltimore.
Yes, please. Yes, let's.
Look at the education in Baltimore. Of 39 schools in Baltimore, in 13 of the high schools there, not a single kid, not a single student tested proficient in math. And only 12% tested proficient in English. And lo and behold, you have graduation exercises, and parents and teachers, and they're so proud of these kids, and they can't read and write. And so they graduate from school, and they want to take maybe a civil service test to get a job as a policeman or work for the city or work for the government. They can't pass the test, and they want to call it discrimination. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I'm at the end of this month, I'll be 83 years old. And when I was coming up in North Philadelphia, in the housing project, Richard Allen Housing Project in North Philadelphia, we did not have the kind of crime and illegitimacy that we see today. And in Philadelphia high schools, they hired 350 school policemen. And when I was in school back in the late 40s and 50s, the only time you saw a policeman in school is during an assembly period where we had to listen to some boring lecture by Officer Friendly about safety.
Yes.
And the Philadelphia School Board just yesterday voted to have metal detectors in all the high schools. I mean, that is for black people who are over 50 and 60 years old, 70 years old, they never experienced anything like that, but yet black leaders, black politicians tolerate the kind of stuff that's happening to black people today.
Now, I noticed to speak exactly what you're talking about in your book. You talk about the economics in your study that you and other folks have done doesn't try to answer the question of fairness or whether racism exists, but what you try to do in the book, from my understanding, is use economic theory to predict the effects of all these policies that have been going on for decades and decades.
Yeah, and some people might be amazed to find out that in 1948, for example, black teenage unemployment was slightly less than white teenage unemployment. Black labor force participation rates among blacks 18 and older were higher than white labor force participation rates. Now today, it's just a shadow of the past. That is, black labor force participation rate is much lower than whites. Their unemployment rate is much higher than whites. And so how do you explain that? You can't say that, well, gee, in 1948 there was less racial discrimination, or blacks had far greater opportunities in 1948 than today. But one of the ways that you can explain it is through labor laws. Most notably, so far as teenagers are concerned, are the minimum wage law. The minimum wage law discriminates against the employment of low-skilled people. And teenagers in general are low-skilled because they lack the experience and maturity of adults. And black teenagers not only share those attributes, but they've gone to rotten schools, so they're worse off. Now, and we put ourselves in, we can tell the effects of the minimum wage law if we ask the question, ask ourselves the question, and say the minimum wage is, let's say it's $10 an hour.
Well, let's use, if I can interject for a second, here, I don't know if you're aware of, but here in the state of Maryland, we just passed, and I think it'll take in effect in July, a $15 an hour minimum wage.
Yeah.
Yep. So, and that will affect the people in Baltimore. So use that one. Feel free.
Well, the question is, pretend that you are an employer.
Yes, sir.
And you must pay $15 an hour. $15 an hour to no matter whom you hire. Will you find it attractive to hire that person who can only produce $7 worth of value an hour? He's so unfortunate, he has skill level that can only produce $7 an hour worth of value. That is, pay him $15 when he can only add $7 an hour to your output. Most employers would look at that as a losing economic proposition, and they wouldn't hire such a person. Although, if they could hire the person and pay him what he's worth, $7 an hour, then he gets a job, he gets some experience, he learns things, and he can move up the economic ladder, eventually earning more. But what the minimum wage law does, it cuts off the bottom rungs of the economic ladder.
Explain, if you would, because I know people hear that a lot when folks talk about it. But when you say someone is only their output is only worth $7 an hour, explain, if you would, what you mean by that, or how is that determined, or who determines that, so to speak?
Well, I think it's clear that let's take you're hiring somebody to type.
Okay.
On a computer.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you have to pay him $15 an hour. And this person only has the skills where he can only type 40 words per minute, and somebody else can type 90 or 100 words a minute. And you have to pay either one of them $15 an hour. So who are you going to hire? You're going to hire the person who has the greater skill. But if you could hire that person who can only type 40 words a minute, and then give him a job, let him get on-the-job training, he'll be worth much more later on. That is, most of us gain skills through on-the-job training. I mean, even you look at doctors, what's an intern? He's getting on-the-job training. And so he's earning a lower pay than doctors in general. But if you made a law saying, well, interns had to be paid the same wage as full-fledged doctors, you would find not many hospitals hiring interns.
So as I understand it, and for our listeners, and and beyond. This figure you said, $7 an hour, this isn't dreamt up arbitrarily. It's directly related to the skills that people, how efficient they do, how many tasks they can do. Am I understanding you correct?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that is you are not going to pay somebody when that somebody can't contribute as much as you have to pay them to your work, to your job.
I love the way you put it in your book when you said, however, economic theory can predict the efforts of not permitting some people to charge lower prices for what they sell and pay higher prices for what they buy. And that's in essence what you're talking about, is it not?
Oh yeah. Setting prices always discriminates against less preferred people. I mean, just another maybe non-economic example. If I were to ask you, if you see a fat, old, ugly, cigar-smoking man married to a beautiful young lady, what is your prediction about that man's income?
Stereotypically that he probably makes a lot of money.
That's right. And so what is he telling the beautiful young lady? He says, I can't compete for your hand on the basis of a handsome man, but I'm going to offer you higher prices. I'm going to take you out. I'm going to give you money. I'm going to let you drive my Rolls Royce, et cetera, et cetera. Now, somebody might say, well, is it fair for beautiful young ladies to charge fat, old, ugly, cigar-smoking men higher prices than they charge handsome men? And so you say, oh, well, no, it's not. That's not fair. So you make a law saying that beautiful young ladies have to treat all men equally. Then what happens to the probability of a fat, old, ugly, cigar-smoking man marrying a beautiful young lady? It goes to zilch. That is, by not allowing him to pay a higher price for what he buys, takes away his most effective means of competing with the more preferred man. And you see this all over. I mean, if you go to some of the worst neighborhoods in Baltimore, you'll see some nice cars, some nice food, some nice clothing, some nice booze, but no nice schools.
Yes.
Now, how come not at least some nice schools, public schools? Well, schools and clothing, schools are distributed through the political mechanism, and cars, clothing, and booze are distributed through the market mechanism. And so poor people have far more power in the market than they have in the political system. That is, if a store is not selling the right kind of stuff that a poor person would want, he can fire the store just by not going there anymore. But if the school is delivering rotten, fraudulent education, what can he do?
Exactly.
He can't fire the school.
Nope. And you
He'll actually take it.
Yes, sir. And you talk about this in your book, and it seems to be one of the main points of the book, that the policies being implemented often have certain intentions, but they bear no relationship to one another as far as the effects that are produced for it. And your argument, with others, is that there's a market system, and what I've heard termed often as a price-coordinated economy that distributes these resources far more efficiently than politicians or political policy efforts.
Yeah, and poor individuals have some power. That is, if a store is selling rotten meat, well, a poor person has the right to fire that store and go somewhere else. He does not have to sit down with any city councilman. He does not have to organize. He just says, I'm taking my business elsewhere. But what about schools? The school is dangerous, providing rotten information, and what can a poor person do?
No.
I mean, the Baltimore schools, I mean, in terms of the crime, I believe, let's say in 2015, 2014, there was an average of 4 teachers were assaulted each day. I mean, and if you just Google assaults on teachers, Baltimore assaults on teachers, you see teachers being shoved up against the blackboard, cussed out, and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, they're really rotten school. And a school like Frederick Douglass, not a single black kid in that school, it's predominantly black, can test proficient in math and test proficient in English. And I think you ought to change the names. Don't call it Frederick Douglass High School. I mean, Frederick Douglass was a great American.
Yes, and a very intelligent, well-spoken, and articulate.
And I think you should call it Al Sharpton High School.
I love it. And every student gets a free megaphone?
Yeah, right.
That's all. That's awesome. In your book, and to kind of tie a little bit of this together, and back to your fat cigar smoking man and pretty young woman scenario. In those scenarios, what you talk about happens in policy making is that here, and to quote your book, economically, the solution to some of the problems of upward mobility that many blacks face is relatively simple. The more difficult problem lies in the political arena, how to reduce or eliminate the power of interest groups to use government to exclude. So
that's right. I mean, I talk about occupational licensing, where people are denied the right to earn a living, let's say with the taxi cab licensing or braiding licenses being demanded. And I might say just so that the listeners can recognize something that I think is very, very important and is overlooked with regard to black people. I frequently said, I think I said in the book, that black Americans as a group have made some of the greatest gains over some of the highest hurdles in the shortest period of time than any other racial group in the history of mankind. Wow. Now, why do I say that? Well, if you just, and I think in the first chapter of the introduction, if you add up the income that black Americans earn, and just think of us as a nation, it would turn out that we are about the 18th or 19th richest nation on the face of the earth.
Your book says 16th.
Black Americans, there are few black Americans are some of the highest income earners in the world. There are some black Americans who are the most famous in the world. There was one black American who was the head of the mightiest military on the face of this earth. And the significance of this is that in 1865, neither a slave nor a slave owner would have believed that this kind of progress was possible in just a little bit over a century. And as such, it speaks well to the intestinal fortitude of a people, and just as importantly, it speaks well of a nation in which these kind of gains would be possible. That is, the gains that black Americans have made would have been impossible anywhere on the face of the earth except the United States. Now, the question that's before us, or the challenge before us, is how can we make these gains gains accessible to roughly 1/3 of the black population for whom these gains appear to be elusive. That is, how can we extend the gains? Because black Americans have made tremendous gains. That is, your grandmother or your great-grandmother would not believe the income that you are earning today. They would not believe the position that you have today. And so it shows that there's been tremendous progress, and the question is how can we get this progress to other black people for whom this progress appears to be impossible under today's standards.
Yes, and thank you, because I was just about, you jumped right where I was going to go. In fact, from your book, it astounded me. It was, quoting you directly, $726 billion of a GDP would be assigned to the black population. That would make them the world's...
I think that was 20, I forget the year,
Okay.
But it might be 28 and 20 or 2010, and it's probably much higher now.
Yes, sir. And you said that would make them the world's 16th richest nation, just behind Turkey, but ahead of Poland, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Switzerland.
Yeah.
No, I was astounded when I read that. Now, let me ask you at least one more question, because it's really the crux I've wanted to ask you. You and other gentlemen like yourself have been, this isn't what you're talking about or the news of it or the advocacy for it isn't anything new. So what is it that we as individual citizens can do, in your opinion, or how do we obviously the politicians aren't going to change this because it's not in their, let's say, beneficial for them to do so politically. So how do we as a public carry this on, or you know, what would be your advice to my listeners sitting out there? What can they do?
Well, you had me stuck there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't have any idea what to do about the school system. I mean, and that is, let's say with education.
Yes, sir.
The only solution I see is to do what we can to get black kids who have parents that are interested in their education, and kids who are interested in education, get them out of the public schools, get them into charter schools, get them into private schools, and we need to ignore the demands for higher school budgets. Higher school budgets just don't do anything. That is, you know, for a kid to get a good education, there are some basic things that the school or politicians cannot do, but these things must be done. That is, in order for a kid to do well in school, somebody must make him go to bed 7 or 8 o'clock at night. Somebody must make him do his homework. Somebody must get up in the morning and feed him breakfast. Somebody must make him mind the teacher. If those things are not done, I don't care how much money you put into education, you're not going to get any results. And those things cannot be done by politicians, and they cannot be done by teachers or administrators. It has to be the family, and the family unit. To break down the family unit is the most devastating thing that's affecting black people. That's holding up many black people from further progress. Just one other statistic: if you look at poverty among blacks and whites, the poverty rate among blacks in general is somewhere around 25%. But among blacks who are married, the poverty rate is 6 or 7%. And for whites, the poverty rate is 3%. So you pick up a lot of the big problems of poverty and imprisonment from female-headed households. I believe some large number of prisoners in jail. I think it's over 60-70% are from female-headed households. And so you need something has to be done about the family structure, and boys critically need fathers. Boys, I believe, and it applies to me as well as many other guys. Boys, when they're born, they are barbarians, and we have about 18 years to try to civilize them before we pass them off on the rest of society. And I don't believe that females are that good in civilizing boys. Boys need a man. Boys need somebody to punch them out when they get around 12, 13 years old and start smelling themselves, think they can take over the household. They need somebody to deal with them. And many times females can't deal with them very well. But anyway, look, it was a delight talking with you, and I hope we can do it again sometime.
Absolutely. I would maybe I can contact you through an email at another time, and maybe schedule something else, because I would love to. It would be an honor, really, and it has been an honor speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time today, Professor
Goodbye.
Williams.
You're watching Books and Authors on TV Free Baltimore.
I'm Dawn Wells, and guess what? You are watching TV Free Baltimore.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of our show. In fact, this is the first time we've ever had one of our guests back for a second visit. And we're lucky to have with us again ghost hunter, I would say graveyard rescuer, and photographer, Jim Jones. And it's great to have you back, Jim.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
All right. And one of the things we're going to look at, because you just did a recent trip and took some photographs of Springton, West Virginia, which was an old coal town.
Yes, sir.
And why did you pick this town to chronicle?
Many of my uncles worked in those mines.
Oh, okay.
And also on the railroads that serviced the mines. This is part of the Pocahontas region of the coal region in West Virginia. The Flat Top District is where Springton is located. And a small mine operated there until about the early 1940s or so. But the town itself really didn't stop in existence until about the early 1980s. The entire town is still there. The closest metropolis that would be, or micropolis on this aspect, would be Matoka. The county seat is in Princeton, West Virginia, about 10 miles from Bluefield. And that's where, of course, where the Baltimore Orioles used to have for many years their minor league team down there, the Bluefield Orioles, and where I saw Craig Worthington play and Pete Harnish and Steve Finley back in the early 80s. So living down there for a few years and doing some genealogy, and that's what got me into it. So going down into the town itself was it was a journey back in time. I mean, it looks like they just got up and walked right out of the town. Once the town pretty much died up.
Is it known to be haunted?
That I'm going to try to find out, because it's going to be one of the first and many trips I'm going to be going back down.
You're going to go back to investigate.
Go back to investigate that.
Well, you took some pictures in the West Virginia, in that area, in that Pocahontas area while you were there, and we want to throw some of those up and look at those. In fact, on the monitor, there's one now. What is this house?
This is Springton. This is looking across the one tributary going for the Bluestone River.
And the building is what?
That is the superintendent's house.
And you didn't get too close to that.
And it got a lot closer than that. This is on the roadside before I cross the bridge going over into the town itself.
Okay. Next.
That town right there is Matoka. That's the
Matoka.
closest town to Springton.
Doesn't look too lively either, but I see a few cars.
And this is a coal mining town that's basically on life support. There's probably that 300 people that still live in this town or so.
Wow.
They had a fire in the mid-1980s, which destroyed portions of the town itself. But a lot of these vacant storefronts. This is all on Barger Street, and beautiful brickwork. I mean, the marble work and the inlays that they had in these buildings is incredible. And it's all, through the town itself. I mean, they didn't spare no expense at the time, but this is all part of the Pocahontas coal region of Mercer County.
Amazing.
And that's the Springton. Houses to the left is the small
little building on the left, right?
And that's where all the fine woodwork is still intact. The mantelpiece, the fireplace. This is the footbridge that went across, and would go. And they had a section of the railroad which runs in front of it. It's kind of hard to see on the photograph, but they had on the empty coal cars and ride into Matoka for the miners if they wanted to work in another mine or back here again.
So it was like a spur, maybe.
And this went on. This is part of the 50-mile loop.
Oh, okay.
And it's all that track is all abandoned as well.
Okay, and here we have, what is this interesting building?
This is one of the small crew bosses. Small cottage is in Matoka. Some of these were actually up there in Springton as well, built like this. It's further up into the hills.
Interesting.
And as you went up in grade as far as being either the crew boss or some other type of supervisor, the higher you went, the bigger house you got, of course. But
it looks like it's up against another building too.
It's actually, believe it or not, it's built into a large garage.
Oh yeah.
And they actually used that for an office at one point. So they repurposed all that.
Yeah, amazing stuff.
And so I thought it was kind of neat to go down and try to document that.
Okay, and this is?
And these are all the houses throughout the region. This is literally these families just packed up or just basically got up and walked away, just left everything there.
Just look at all that real estate. Huh? Right down.
And here's the video of the...
A video?
This is my video here that I shot up in Springton itself, trying to get to as close as I could to the coal mine itself. Hey guys, hey, it's Big Jim Jones. I'm out here at the old mining town of Springton, West Virginia. It's here in Mercer County, and just outside of Matoka, which is probably the largest town close to here. But this town is abandoned. This is the old coal mines and some of the employee houses. That was here. And this is where my family all worked on these coal mines many years ago. This is the main stretch that came up through basically a one-lane road. Over here is still abandoned, except for across the street. And the town's called Ill now. I-L-L. That's probably one of the superintendent's house was here. But over here, this is the Springton company store. Still standing, but the roof up here is all pretty much caved in. The brickwork on this is incredible. Beautiful building. This is a little hard to get to, traveling from Bluefield. But it's kind of interesting to see what may be inside here. Kind of go around a little bit, but you can see that beautiful brickwork up here at the top. And those arches. And this is March 7th, 2019. And we've had some snowfall through here in this part of Mercer County. And on Monday and such, it's pretty cool. Kind of gives it a eerie feeling, almost like the Silent Hill. Now, here's a shot of the abandoned house. Probably was one of the superintendents of the mines. Lived in here. But the store itself, I mean, it's incredible. I'll see if I can go over here on the side. Kind of look inside the windows. The floors are caved in. Just got to be careful about how we're going to look at this. Get through this pucker brush and other things here. The wild rose. Yep. Let's see. Getting hung up here a little bit. But you can't see much, but the original windows are here. This is the original glass. Everybody's been here for years upon years. But this is where all the folks who worked in the coal mines in this area, they get paid in script. So it was only good to come to the company store. Of course, they had a severe markup on these. So basically, these these poor souls who worked in the mines, they had to basically were forced to buy everything at the company store, whatever they needed. And so it's almost like they were just imprisoned here, in a way. We'll walk around the side here to the front. And it's got that barn light on it over the front door, which is beautiful. Now, this is where the post office would have been in this area here. It's either this, it's in one of these sections of the wings of the store. But this is where you would get paid with the script and for your durable goods and whatnot. And you would come in and let's see now. Previous videos that people have shot on YouTube. Hopefully you can see it. Should still have the mantelpiece in there. Look at the beautiful woodwork in there. This is the post office here section. And I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And this might have been some of the stuff that was here. Or yeah, Barbie stuff. It definitely wouldn't be from the time period. But let's go up the steps a little bit. We'll peer over. This is what the ruins looks like now inside. Now they had metal ceilings. Look how beautiful that is. At one time, and in the center section of that, sconces would have came down with lights. But everything caved into the basement. All the beautiful woodwork is gone now. Other than the walls being structurally sound, see, they used wooden and steel beams to hold the structure up. You see gypsum board over there. Some people were here back in the 80s. But then everything was shuttered up and let them go. So it's pretty sad to see how this town just went by the way of a lot of other small towns. When the population died out and moved out, everything was left behind. It's sad. All right, guys, thanks for watching my video. You take care. And as always, try to document these lost and forgotten places. God bless America. Until next time.
Let's go to the next one. What do we have here, Jim?
This is the superintendent's house here.
Superintendent's house, but it looks like a little shack or something in the foreground.
This is his probably their shed where they kept their livestock feed, or if they had chickens on the property, some other things.
We can see he had the biggest house, of course, the superintendent. Yeah. Yeah, nice long porch. And this here, you were going to tell us about that one.
This is the final stop of Hank Williams Sr. before he died.
Wow.
January 1953, he already had performed at a previous location. His driver was taken around and was en route to another stop, and they decided to pull in the field in the back of his car.
Now, is this building abandoned? Or?
That's an abandoned bar. Mm-hmm.
An abandoned bar,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like not even a national monument or anything to say this is where Hank Williams was last seen.
And sadly, that right there is not. The city of Bluefield has refused to acknowledge this as one of the as a historic location, and it's also being threatened with demolition.
It's a shame.
It is a shame. I mean, this is it's kind of like like George Washington slept here.
Right,
well, this is where Hank Williams drank here. So
right. I mean, it's a historic monument.
It's a little honky-tonk.
Interesting that he is, connected to West Virginia, just like Patsy Cline is connected to West Virginia too.
And she's buried in Winchester, Virginia. I mean, she had the sound of an angel. Certain people would say, and she had a very distinctive singing voice as well as Hank Williams. All of them were country greats, and it's tragic that they lost their lives at an early age.
Right, exactly. So I hope somebody preserves that and sees this and does something about it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And here, what do we have here?
This is the post office.
Oh, that is the post
Springton. Springton itself was the postal service had shut it down, and then their next big town would be Ill, which incorporated what was left of Springton. But this is where through these doors you would go into, and you can go into the post office, or you can go over into the general store from here, or the companies with graffiti and such.
It's amazing.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, these craftsmen, just to look at the woodwork.
And this, what was this?
And this is the company store.
Oh, the company store.
Just giving it a little bit of an eerie overtone.
You took
just to forebode something beautiful and being lived in again. This building could be done the same way. Many of these buildings.
Sure. But I guess
it's got good bones. It's just a matter of the right person with the right amount of money.
But there's no business there. Nobody wants to live there.
Now here's the photographs.
Oh, here we go. Some more.
With my passion, I also build cigar box guitars as a hobby, and I play guitar, and
so that's you.
So I decided, I take them down with me, and I wanted to try to do something that not too many people who were in the cigar box guitar building community do, and they have basically like stage photographs, and I've worked on a few songs dedicated to the coal miners, and this one here, this is on Raleigh Street. This is an abandoned business section in Bluefield, part of West Virginia, because Bluefield is split in half between Virginia and West Virginia.
And the stone color, that blue, that's real, right?
That is actual.
You did not
painted.
enhance that. No.
That's been enhanced a little bit, but more to bring the blue out.
Yeah, okay.
But it's been painted blue. Some of the streets actually have a bluish hue to them, believe it or not.
Well, because it's Bluefield.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's an old. These are a couple old bars that's on the same street.
That's you there playing again?
This is me playing with one of my other. That's my 3-string cigar box guitar. The other one is a 4-string cigar box guitar. And this is the alleyway between the businesses. This is where they had a streetcar line, and this is where they came down the steps when they come out into the business district. This is where the shopping district used to be.
Interesting.
And your furniture businesses, your clothing, and things like that.
And talk about Jimmy's here.
Something they look like Mel's Diner, or if you want to look at, if you remember that show, Alice.
Sure. Alice, right.
Or if you want to look at like the old 50s diners, Jimmy's was it. They had this Art Deco type 1950s, had the little Rockola little music stations right there at each table.
Wow.
A lot of chrome and a lot of leather. It was in there.
But you said they took it out of there, though, right?
It's been stripped out of there. Actually, there are some microbreweries is hoping to try to occupy some of these spaces down there.
That'd be great.
But it'd be great to be able, if they could take and someone would come in there, redo the building itself, and reopen it as Jimmy's Restaurant again with the retro feel to it. And
because the people who like signage again, restaurant underneath of it, people would love to just collect those signs too.
Oh, you down through that district. There's so many of the old signs that had the baked on enamel.
Oh wow!
And it's just left there, just abandoned, just laying out there, and
rusting. I'm sure.
Just rusting away.
Yeah, closed.
Close time. So,
closed time.
Yeah, close time. That was that. In there, the bar is still there. Believe it or not, the glasses are still up behind, and the mugs are still up behind the bar.
Amazing. Again,
as if they just got and walked out of there.
But beyond that, because I don't know how much time we have left, have you done any of your ghost hunting since the last time we've been here?
I've been working with a grandson of one of the patients of Spring Grove State Hospital.
Okay.
His wife had saw my video about Spring Grove State Hospital, because I put it there mainly not only to save the hospital, but there's only a handful of marked graves.
Oh wow!
And so the gentleman who contacted me, his wife had saw the video, because at the very end, one of the last I do slideshow videos, and one of the last slides was a woman by the name of Nancy Jackson. Mm-hmm. Nancy Celia Jackson came from West Virginia, up near around the Beckley area. Mm-hmm. She was a seamstress. She came to Baltimore, had children, and developed basically what was dementia. Mm-hmm. To make a long story short, she was the family couldn't afford for her care. They placed her in Spring Grove in June of 1955, and she died a month later. I'll make a long story short, that there's some ties between them, my mother and my father.
Okay.
It's all coincided with this. He had contacted the state of Maryland and also the superintendent of Spring Grove, and through the whole chain, and he's acquired a new headstone on her grave, and then donate the old one to the Spring Grove Alumni Museum.
Terrific. And maybe we'll be there to photograph that.
I hope you guys get the first crack at it.
Thank you. And from the last time you talked about, I don't know if it's happened in last year's legislature or this year's legislature, but there were some laws that either you were watching or you were advocating about protecting some of these small cemeteries.
Before they would go out and they would document a lot of these cemeteries, if you had a complaint about, let's say, if you go over into Mount Auburn Cemetery, and we know how bad that is over there in Westport, and it's where Joe Gans is buried, who's the heavyweight boxer. Right. And you go there and you see the conditions there. People dump their trash there and things of that nature. You try contacting the church who's running that cemetery, and they don't clean it up. Well, you turn it over to the state, and this is who you would go through. Mm-hmm. All the thing they would do, they would send out volunteers to go out and document these occurrences, but they had no legal authority, or had no authority itself, fines or cite them. And now this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to give that power to those groups.
That's great. I hope we do get all that in there. I mean, but Mount Auburn was saved. We know that. Mm-hmm. Luckily. And cleaned up, and you can see Joe Gann's grave now and all of that. And that might have been, I think it was done by some church people, or they did take care of it on their own.
And usually it used to be a large part of it. I remember going through there when I did one of the videos some years ago about it, and going in there and seeing where people would dump their trash off and things like that there. So
I remember seeing that
it's good to see that there are some people who actually take care of going in there and volunteering, educate people, and motivate other people, and doing these videos and spreading the word has been the most important. I mean, not only for actually trying to preserve these cemeteries, but also if you're in a genealogy. Mm-hmm. This is some of the greatest information you're ever going to get is off of a headstone. You may even get a photograph that's actually on headstones during the periods. You can go out there and get that person that might be buried there.
Well, that's your work and what you're doing. And again, some people may have seen the former video. Look into the monitor over here and tell people how they can find out about this stuff. Your contact information for your different organizations. Okay.
Well, you can contact me. I'm Big Jim Jones on Facebook. I have two profiles. I have my main profile, Big Jim Jones, if you type that in, or Prismed Jim Jones. It's PRISMD Jim Jones. The Paranormal Research and Investigation Society of Maryland. That's www.prismd.net. That's with our group. Also have some sites on there. I'm on Instagram, Big Jim Jones. Also on Twitter. I'm on several other different media sites. And just type in cemetery preservation videos. Videos throughout the United States is Explore Quest America. And I've been very blessed. I've been able to go all across the United States and seen some of God's great wonders. And it's been an incredible ride, and I got 41 out of 50 states, so hopefully before my bucket list runs out.
Well, that's great, Jim, and thank you again, and I'm sure we'll have you back again and again and again.
I hope so. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
All right. And so, folks, that's the end of another interesting program here. I hope you all liked this one. I did. And we're going to see some more of Jim Jones, and I'll say his discoveries and adventures. He's a good friend of the station, and we want to see more of what he's done, and I'm sure you want to see more of what he's done. So until next time, this is Paul Stefan saying thank you for tuning in.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
This is Sam with Restore Computer Repair in Baltimore, Maryland. If you're having any computer problems whatsoever with your Mac or PC, desktop or laptop, we can fix it at a guaranteed lowest price. We're located at 8701 Harford Road in Parkville, Maryland, 21234. You can reach us at 443-725-5050. That's 443-725-5050. We're open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can reach us at www.restorecomputerrepair.com.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, and welcome to the program. You know, they say you can't judge a book by its cover. And also, you can't really judge a person by their profession. And today, we have just such a person. Our guest is somebody who spent approximately 30 years in the IT profession, but he has so many interests, and he's much more than that. So we are very, very pleased today to have with us musician, actor, and gentleman of many talents, Mr. Steve Rifkin. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Paul. Thanks so much for having me
It's
here
great
today.
to have you here. And I want to ask you a little bit about, when did you first get an interest in show business? Was that something that started as a child? Or?
Yeah, I think so, because I was always kind of a ham. But I didn't get involved in show business until high school, when I became involved in some of the school musicals. So a little bit of acting, a little bit of song, and what was slightly passable as dance for me.
So you got into high school musicals?
High school musicals, yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Did you have leads or anything like
No, a supporting player, and I was happy with that. Because
Okay.
otherwise there's a lot of work memorizing.
Oh, yeah, that's
lines.
always the hard part.
It's hard enough to, a lot of these were musicals, so the dance
Yeah.
numbers, and it's hard enough for me
Yeah.
to remember how to do what with dance.
Now, who would you think of as being, or what were your influences, do you think?
Well, growing up, I was very much into horror movies. I loved horror and
okay.
science fiction, a lot of the old classic movies. But I can't consider them as being true influences. But I just loved movies in general. I loved the thought of being able to be other people, to play other types and form characters.
So the old movies, like I understand,
Older movies.
you like the Marx Brothers.
I like the Marx Brothers.
And Groucho, especially.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean all the classic comedians.
Right.
But it's fun to be someone else sometimes and to escape who you are. And I love nostalgia. So going to become a famous character or a fictional character, it's a thrill.
But you went into an IT profession.
I did.
Yeah.
I originally in college I started as a film major, and I left doing film and decided to go into IT. thinking that, I was good with computers and perhaps, I would have a good living off of that. And then one day in the future, I would be able to go back to doing film.
Oh.
This is the one day now.
Okay.
We're there.
Great, you made it.
Yeah, it's taken 30 years to
Not
do that.
many people get a chance to live their dreams.
Well, we do it for fun now. I mean, it's it's a lot of independent filmmaking, and but I enjoy it.
Well, that's good. That's really good. Now, what were your? I guess the high school musicals. That was your earliest creative outlet, would you say?
I've been I like to sing. I've been I guess an amateur singer early on. Just I always sang for people, and I think that that was a big influence for me to want to get to make myself visible to people. So not as much of the acting, I think, at the time.
Right.
And again, they were bit parts in these musicals.
Right.
I mean, since then, I've grown to really like doing the bit parts and trying to get more involved. Yep. But I actually, when I was doing film back in college, I liked the cinematography part of film. I liked to make films. I liked to operate the camera, work on special effects, and so forth. Films I would do for college were technically, they were good technically, but the soul for making the films, the direction, the screenwriting, that wasn't my forte, and I didn't want to continue in that regard. In college, you had to be a screenwriter as well. You had to be a director. You had to learn to do all these things. When I moved into computers, I never got to the screenwriting part until many years later when I was introduced to doing that in independent filmmaking. But computers, I was good at. I enjoyed doing that too. So it was a skill. I stuck with that.
Now, I would say, I guess I was going to ask you the question, but it seems like from what we've talked about, its answer's there, but you can tell me about it. It seems like music really is your first love.
Well, I love to sing. Yeah. I do. I had a very early influence by a musical group called Electric Light Orchestra, ELO. Jeff Lynne is my musical idol. I've always wanted to be Jeff musically. A lot of his fans do. And eventually I said to myself, I'm going to find a way to be able to have his inspiration into doing music that I can provide to other people.
Now, like other family members, I know your brother, was he an influence on you then musically?
My brother was, my mother was too. My mother sang Off-Broadway.
She did?
She could sing opera.
Wow.
Even until she passed away, which was a little over a year ago. Not even a year ago. 7 months ago. Even till the end, she could sing opera.
Talented singer, your mom. And she was actually, was an actor singing in New York?
Yeah, she would be. She was in New York. I think she did some Yiddish theater.
Yiddish theater, yeah.
And she was terrific. She was good. She was a ham too. My brother is, his name is Marty Rifkin. He's a producer, and he's a musician and singer out, and instrumentalist out in California, and an engineer. He runs his own studio, and he was the influence for me to record. I went out to visit him in LA back in the early 90s, saw his studio set up, and I said to myself, that's what I want to do. I wanted to become a singer. I wanted to be able to decide, produce how I want a song to sound. And it took me a few years to get everything I needed together, but I met up with some people and started running a studio for creating demos for other people.
But you were then basically self-taught or from other people. You didn't go to a school like Sheffield or anything?
No. And listening to some of my early works, you could tell. But it's gotten better. There was a big shift in the early 90s and through the early 2000s. Everything I did was analog, and I was restricted by tape, and I was restricted by the number of tracks. Once I was convinced, and it took a lot of convincing to move digital, I found that I could do all kinds of things. My brother was huge in getting me trained to be able to do what I do now. A lot of remote classes with him, basically him showing me, here's what you do, and we're on the phone doing this. But I learned a lot, and I've gone from doing things with an 8-track to being able to do songs that might have 60 to 70 tracks worth of music in there that I need to mix together.
That's pretty amazing.
It's fun.
And you learned all that stuff just by doing mostly, and from tutorials from your brother.
Right. I hear it. I'll pick up on how I would want the song to sound. And again, I always have influence. I've had a lot of influence from hearing and listening to a lot of Beatles, Queen, some Moody Blues, all those pop bands. Bands that had a lot of melody. Tight songs. Things that make people happy when they hear them, hitting those chords. That's what I like. So sometimes, you know, when I'm co-arranging, I want to throw in something that sounds pleasant into the music, no matter what kind of song it is. I want people to have fun hearing it. And I want us to have fun recording it too.
So when you hear a song, or maybe the basic melody of a song, or listen to something, you might say, well, I think it could use a little guitar here, or a little drum here, or even something unusual. I'll throw a violin in there or something.
Yes,
okay.
I'll do that. Now, I also find that I work with musicians who will also do that and say, I think this would work well there.
Yeah.
And it takes me a bit sometimes because I want to hear everything, how it all sounds together. But I incorporate that as well. That's why I will co-arrange with somebody.
Right.
I don't arrange the full songs unless it's something I'm working on for myself. But I do take in everybody's opinions and try to make it work. But there are times that I'll be like, you really need to do it this way because this will make a big impact. And my goal is, again, to make people who are listening, the audience, feel good about what they're hearing.
Now, that means rearranging. I mean, you should have some skills as far as writing music then, right?
Oh, tunes. Yeah, I'm not much of a lyricist. My words are too simple, I think. But
and again, without that kind of training, people go to college for that too, right?
Sure, sure they do. And for me, it's just, here is what I'd want to hear.
Oh, okay.
Right? It's that here's what I'd want to hear, and here's what I think other people would want to hear too.
Yeah.
You know, I'll listen to songs on the radio. I do this a lot. I'll listen to songs on the radio and find that I can break down the tracks I'm hearing into separate tracks. So I'll be listening and say, okay, let me just listen to the bass track while I'm listening to the song. Let me listen to how they do the drums. Let me listen to how they do the effects. What made that a successful song? How can I incorporate that into something I do? I do that all the time because that's where my learning is. These people who are experts out there recording in real big studios and doing these songs, they know the magic. So to pick up that magic, I have to listen and be able to break that down.
Well, I gotta say, a good person to learn from was the guy who was the, producer, engineer for the Beatles.
Oh, actually,
he gave him the sound.
George Martin.
Yeah, George Martin.
Yeah, they did amazing stuff with their music, and the fifth Beatle was able to do that. Yeah.
And that's a good place to learn from. But it's great that you have an ear. Like I would say something with me being a singer a lot of times. To say I could say something how I'd want to see a song to go. I could sing out how I'd want that other part to be.
Right.
Because I can't compose it. I can't write the notes on a scale that way.
Well, I'm like that too. I mean, I'm not an instrumentalist. I play a little bit of rhythm guitar. I can play some drums to get a demo track done. But I hear instruments. It could be brass. It could be strings. It could be anything. What a bass line might want to sound like. And I will have to relay that to the musicians who are recording. When we record in my studio, we have a lead singer who sings, we have our drummer, we have an instrumentalist. It might be the same person as the lead singer. I work with a gentleman named Jimmy Brown. We've done several songs together, and he's amazing. And he's got a terrific lead vocal, and the keyboards, guitars, everything he lays out. Our drummer, we have a drummer I've been working with lately, Timmy Perpitsakis. Sorry, Timmy. Timmy P, we call him.
Okay, that's good.
Good. Really good, talented musicians. And I try to throw in those parts that will make that song pop even more.
Okay.
And what I do in the studio, besides the engineering and the production, is I sing all the background vocals you'll hear in our songs. That's the rule in my studio.
That's okay.
I will they can record whatever they need to record. I'll help produce them. But when it comes to backing vocals, I develop them and I will record them. That's the rule, and it's an easy rule to deal with. They don't have to worry about that. And my harmony vocals will be multi-track, so that's where we get these big, giant tracks in there. I can make small bits of harmony, or I can make them sound really large. I can make a choir. But that's all. That part's all me. Okay. That's how I get out to sing. That's how I record. That's all I started my studio for, was getting an outlet to record, and my vocals to sing, and that's how I do it.
Well, you have your own studio. You mean you don't want to sing lead?
I would, but I've enjoyed. I'd have to bring in instrumentalists to record my stuff. I'm not there yet. I'm working on it. I've written a lot of songs in my life, but I haven't really recorded them. I hear them all in my head, but I've been so busy recording other people. There's been no times I've had offers for people to come in and we'll record that for you. Great, but I still got to finish recording them. And then once I record them, there's something else that comes in for me to record.
So you're busy with this. This
I am busy.
Side business. Yeah.
I take breaks too, because I got a lot of hobbies and a lot of interests. So I do things in shifts, right?
Well, are there anybody that you have recorded that people would know?
Right now, probably Jimmy Brown. Jimmy Brown is been in several bands. He does his band now, Radio Religion. He's amazing. He's an amazing guy. Okay, and I hope to work with some local artists more. I've done a lot with songwriters, musicians back in the 90s, creating demos for them. That was the big thing for me. And I'd like to branch out now and do more commercially. And Jimmy's songs are now considered, I guess, commercial enough because they're out there. You can purchase them online, and very happy with that.
Well,
I like the exposure.
That's great, because we love to be able to interview musicians, have people. We've had musicians in here. So, I mean, maybe somebody, I don't know if you've heard of her, but Ellen Cherry, I mean, she's a big singer in Baltimore.
I don't know Ellen Cherry. I don't know a lot of the musicians. When my brother was living in town, I'd pick up on the musicians here. But I don't follow that as much. I do a lot in my life that's not just the music too, so I don't have time to follow as much as I'd like to.
I understand that. Now, another thing would be, how did you get started in acting beyond high school?
Well, my friends locally are all into acting. I felt left out. And so I wanted to be a part of that because I knew I could do it. And so I had friends who were in the media too, several anchor people and reporters I went to school with. So in the news realm, they did the media, that kind of media. But I had friends, Mitch Klein, Leanna Chamish, these are local folks. Mitch does a lot of film and editing and effects, and Leanna Chamish,
and she's been here,
been on your show. She's an actress. Terrific. And another friend of mine, Rob Long, he's been busy helping out doing film work. He's a great actor. And I've been hanging with them for several years, and I'm like, I want to get involved in this. So they introduced me to someone named Lee Dahl. Lee Dahl changed my life.
Oh, he did?
He absolutely did.
And he was here, as you know.
Yes. He is a total inspiration for film. He's known as Mr. Entertainment. And there's a reason for that. He's able to bring people together to produce entertainment, fun entertainment. And I met Lee at a party, and Lee and I hit it off really well. And Lee said, let me see if I can get you into acting in one of his films. And he came up with a character for me to do. The character was named Steve Areno, ace photographer. And he was a wild, wacky guy. Not Lee. Well, Lee is too. But Steve Areno is. And I really enjoyed playing that. And once he did that, it was a little short scene in a film. He asked me back to do more. And I'm going to keep doing that. So that's where I started with the acting. Once I was doing that, Lee said, we're going to have you write a screenplay. And I said, no. That's why I got out of doing filmmaking in college. He said, no, we're going to do it. You're going to do it.
Wow.
And so he gave me, I said, look, I need a plot summary. I need scene-by-scene plot summaries, and then I'll try my hand at it. And I did it. and
wow.
I enjoyed that. And he had me do it twice for another film, and I really enjoyed it.
What movies were they?
One was The Fixer.
Okay.
So I co-wrote that. So and the other one was a film called Rise and Fall in Love, and that was a musical that we put together, and that was fun. And there were sections of it that I wrote. And there were sections of it other people threw in too. The only things I don't write are my parts. Steve Areno, ace photographer, because Steve Areno's brain is stuck in the 1950s and only speaks hepcat, and a lot of what I had to speak, I didn't understand what I was actually saying in English. So someone had to write the hepcat and tell me what it was supposed to be saying in my language, and then I could go with it.
Did Lee write the other part, that part for you?
What's that?
Did Lee write your part?
Oh, yes, Lee
wrote your part.
Yeah, Lee's good with that. And then along with that, I realized I really like playing a character.
Oh, okay.
So I got involved in old time radio. If you remember old time radio, it's radio shows from the golden age of radio, the 40s, the 50s. And so I've gotten involved in doing old time radio recreations. And I absolutely love that because I can be a character, have the script right in front of me, and really go at it. In a short period of time, I can pick up on a character and start.
And is there a group of people who do this?
Well, there are conventions that do old time radio recreations. There's a cruise that does old time radio recreations. I have not gone on there yet.
Okay.
I work. I'm on the staff of a convention called the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention, and each year they do old time radio show recreations, and I audition for them, and I try to get in them, and I do get in some of their shows, and I enjoy doing that on stage. It's a lot of fun.
I bet.
I've done everything from playing Popeye to playing Peter Lorre, to being on Dragnet, playing a cowboy, and changing voices and so forth. I think Popeye at one time was my favorite. Peter Lorre is now my favorite.
Oh, you like being him, huh?
Yeah, it's different because it's not me. It's
I gotcha. Now, another thing is you have so many other interests, but you can maybe bring that up about your memorabilia collection?
I do. I'm a toy collector, avid toy collector. Not so much props.
Yeah.
But
actual
genre toys from everywhere from the 60s to modern day, but some science fiction, cartoon, to superheroes. A lot of superheroes.
How about G.I. Joe? I had him when I was a kid.
I have a G.I. Joe in the space capsule, and I have that on display.
That's amazing.
That's fun. I don't have as much. My brother had the G.I. Joes growing up.
Yeah,
I have what's ever left over of them.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not necessarily in the best condition, but
I wish I'd kept that stuff.
Yeah, but I do. I like it, and I set up my home it's a fun house to come to because there's lots of stuff. But I set up my basement is like a museum.
Wow.
Yeah. Which I get a lot of inspiration from Steve Jeppy, who was the owner of Jeppy's Entertainment Museum.
Right.
No longer a museum. Not
there anymore. No.
An inspiration. I wanted to make a little Jeppy's Entertainment Museum, and
so now you do. You have a little.
I was a charter member of that museum, and I enjoyed going there.
So you have a little Rifkin museum.
Yeah, a little Rifkin museum.
That's fun. And you do other things too. You do metal detecting.
I do on the side. I have a lot of hobbies. I do some metal detecting. I'm an avid amateur radio operator, ham radio operator.
Interesting that you'd still be doing that because I think computer would have taken a lot of people away from
you. Would think so.
Yeah.
But it's fun to get down to. You know what? It's always what's inspired me about ham radio is I can sit in my ham radio room, we call it Radio Shack, and have a radio and an antenna outside my house and talk to someone across the world where there's nothing in between my antenna and theirs except for sky, ocean, earth, nothing else. It's fascinating. It's cool. Plus, there's a lot of computer related projects you can do with ham radio now.
Oh,
do that.
Okay.
And I do amateur astronomy, observational astronomy, not the math part of astronomy. But
you look like you.
I look.
The Orion Nebula.
I've been working on astrophotography. I'm learning astrophotography, and recently, thanks to a good friend of mine, another great actor, Brian St. August. I can't say enough about him.
Terrific
He's
man.
an amazing guy.
He is.
And he provided me an old telescope of his, a very big, fancy telescope. And since I've been working with that, I've had telescopes for decades, but since I've been working with that, it has changed my life now because I get to see things and start taking pictures of things that I've never thought I could.
Well, that's terrific too. So you stay busy, Steve.
I like to. It's fun because I've gotten to this age. I don't need to say
no, you don't have to.
But I miss my childhood. I love my childhood. I love the fact that when you were a kid, you could do anything you wanted to do, or dream about it. Now I can do those things. I couldn't do all of them when I was a kid, but I can do that now, and it's so much fun. I just like to do whatever tickles my fancy.
Right. Well, people say you should get in contact with your inner child.
That's what I am.
Sounds like you have.
I'm a big kid. I totally miss the 70s. I just gave away the decade I was growing up. But
that was the disco era.
yeah, it was. Okay.
Sort of.
There's other stuff that happened in
old TV too. Don't forget old TV.
Nostalgia TV. Big fan of nostalgia.
You like
TV.
a lot of old TV, like
old
Me TV.
50s, 60s. Yeah, Me TV. Oh, it's godsend.
So you'd be like the Brady Bunch and stuff.
Oh, of course. Sure.
You like the old shows. Yeah.
Everything. I don't even know if I have a favorite. I like the era.
You just don't have a
favorite. I miss the old TV commercials from the 60s and 70s. They were fun too. I like watching some of them sometimes.
Because when Lee was here, he said his big influence was The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. That was his big thing.
Mine, that was prior to you. I started more in the 60s.
Yeah.
I have fun. Groups of us will watch, courtesy of my friend George Stover, another amazing actor.
Exactly.
Who was also on your show.
Yes.
And he gets us together and we're able to watch old, nostalgic, rare TV shows.
Oh, rare TV shows.
Rare TV shows.
Like,
it's fun.
For example?
We'll watch maybe an episode of Bachelor Father and some detective shows, even the Ding Dong School, if you remember something like that.
I remember what that was.
Just odd thing. And we'll laugh through them. And just sometimes we come out of some of the shows, that was amazing. Why don't they do that today?
Exactly.
It's fun.
And part of what our studio is trying to do is bring some of that back, kind of a retro feel to.
Well, I think part of that is, the shows on TV today are very real. They're like watching life around us. And I've always said that TV, at least for me, should be a place to escape the real. Because the live TV is like sometimes watching the news. I want to go back to the fun days where TV was make-believe. You knew it was make-believe, and it was a way to escape.
Like Happy Days.
Like Happy Days. Even as far as back, Gilligan's Island.
Oh, of course.
I Dream of Jeannie.
Great shows.
Just going back to the fun.
Right.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
Right?
They were absurd premises even then.
Even detective shows.
Yeah.
That you could escape that and realize, wow, if these are the way crimes were handled back then, that would be better than the way crimes are dealt with now. I mean, there's so much going on in this world. It's just nice to sit back and relax, put on that Me TV and watch your show.
Well, in your busy life, what are your upcoming projects?
Well, I've got songs I need to finish. I'm working on 3 right now.
Okay.
2 for one artist and 1 for another. And trying to get that squared away. Busy with work and busy with family. I've been working where I've worked. I've worked at Johns Hopkins University for almost 21 years now.
It's quite impressive.
Yeah, it's a fun place. It's a great place, very rewarding.
We have to bring it up here that the fact that overlap 2 of your worlds, you work at Johns Hopkins University with John Astin.
I do.
Who was a star of a 60s sitcom, The Addams Family.
The Addams Family, and he was also one of the co-stars of I'm Dickens, He's Fenster.
I remember that.
Another great comedy. He's
Marty
done
Ingalls
so much.
was the
Marty
other guy.
Ingalls, right.
I remember that show too.
Yes. I think John, his world of pratfalls, his experience with pratfalls probably came from Dickens and Fenster. What a great show. What a great guy. John's amazing.
Amazing man.
Amazing man.
And we'd love to have him in here. So, or actually, we'll go to him. That's why we want to go see him.
There you go.
All right. Any final words for us, Steve?
No, I appreciate being on here. It's a chance to tell people what I do and what I can help do for people. We're interested in learning about various hobbies, interests I have, or getting involved in studio production. I'll say with music studio production, if you're a live musician and never recorded it in the studio, you should try it. It's a slightly different world, but it can be a very fun and rewarding world. And with film, I want to do more. So
Okay.
if people are looking for actors,
Okay.
call me.
Great.
I'm ready to come in.
Well, give people your contact information.
Well, you can locate me on Facebook. That's probably the easiest way to find me. Just look up Steve Rifkin in Baltimore, and you'll see my mug somewhere on Facebook there. And I'm also on IMDb, known as Steve Rifkin, lowercase Roman numeral 2. You'll see me there.
You're not the other Steve Rifkin.
I'm not the other one of the two Steve.
Oh, there's another one.
There were 2 of us before, and now there are 3.
3 of you.
Yeah, I'm right in the middle. I'm the middle child.
Okay, great. All right, Steve. It was a lot of fun, and thank you for being here.
Paul, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I really enjoyed it.
And so, folks, that's the end of another one of our fun interviews today. And tune in again soon, and we'll see you then.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, I'm Steve Darnall, the publisher of Nostalgia Digest, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore. Well done.
The Despothier is on my shore, Maryland, my Maryland. His torch is at thy temple door, Maryland, my Maryland. Avenge the patriotic roar that fleck the streets of Baltimore, and be the battle queen of yore, Maryland, my Maryland. Thou wilt not cower in the dust, Maryland, my Maryland. Thy beaming sword shall never rust, Maryland, my Maryland. Remember Carroll's sacred trust, remember Howard's warlike thrust, and always onward with the just, Maryland, my Maryland.
This concludes another day of live stream broadcasting from TV Free Baltimore.